Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this in the world. I hope you guys are doing okay. So today we're going to be discussing something that I said I was going to talk about a very long time ago, but I haven't really had the chance to get around to it. And that is what I would change in Mortal Kombat 1. Now, I did this video a long time ago, but because there's been so many new subscribers and a lot of interaction on the channel, I'm going to redo it and I'm going to focus on the gameplay portion for this video, because I don't really feel like there's much of a need to split up into several videos. I'll just go over everything at once, and then if it gets too long you can always pause it and come back watch later. I'm not going to talk about things outside of the general gameplay just because they're very obvious. Things like crossplay and having a function online is not something that I need to explain that a game should have. It's also not really something that is up for debate in 2024. It's something that NRS should have had figured out before they released the game. So we're going to focus purely on gameplay things because obviously they have their own gameplay philosophy. I have my own ideas for Mortal Kombat, having played basically every single Mortal Kombat that has ever existed, and then an abundance of other fighting games. I think I have an idea of how I'd like this game to look. Now, what I've done for this video is I've specifically made it for Mortal Kombat 1. And I've made it for things that I think that they could probably implement. I don't think these are radical changes. I think there's a few things they could implement into this game to make it a bit more complex and a bit more exciting. And I'm going to point a couple of things out and draw some comparisons to Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, Tekken, maybe even some arena fighters, just to give you guys an idea of what I think this game is lacking and what it can take from those. So we're going to start right at the top. This is mostly going to be unedited. I'm just going to rattle off my ideas and show you guys what I mean. So the first thing that I think Mortal Kombat games have been lacking, and lacking for a very long time, as a matter of fact lacking completely, is counter hits. Now, in every other fighting game, as you can see here, a counter hit will work this way. So you'll do a normal attack, and then you'll do the counter hit version, and it will have a different application. What happens with counter hits is that when you throw an attack out, and somebody's attacking, and your attack hits first, the move has different applications. Unfortunately, in Mortal Kombat's instance, that is not the case. So if you see here with Shao Kahn, if I do his back triangle, or if you're on Xbox, whatever that is on Xbox, I don't know, or if I do his standing triangle, standing 2, right, we'll use numbered notation, standing 2. If you throw a button out in between that, there is no counter hit. So this game has no alternative animations for the moves, and this is really important in a fighting game, and it adds a layer of depth to the fighting game. So say for example this was Tekken and Shao Kahn was in Tekken, or if he was in Street Fighter, we'll use Street Fighter because it looks a bit closer to Mortal Kombat, and I do a stand 2, and Sindel does a move as well. This animation will change. It will become a counter hit animation, and what will happen is where I can usually only do this after a normal attack, so if I do this, that is what will come out on a normal attack. But if I do this and get a counter hit in Street Fighter, I will likely then be able to combo something like that, because the move's properties would have changed. They would have added a layer of complexity to the game and new ways to do combos, new applications for the move. In Street Fighter, they took it one step further and they have like crushing counters, I'm not sure what they're called, where there is an added layer of counter hit to the game. So if I got a counter hit with this move, for example, in this game, if I do this, this is pretty much the combo that I can get from it. Oh, I dropped it there, it's been a little while. So if I do that move, I'll do it again, just so you guys understand. That's pretty much my combo. Like I don't know if you can get more now, it's been a while since I've played MK1. But in Street Fighter, if I got like a crushing counter or whatever they're called, this move would gain new properties. Let's say that this move became a crushing counter. I might be able to get a whole new list of moves from it. So it would change the animation of it completely, and it would give the move new applications. And that's something that Mortal Kombat is lacking heavily in. And there's so many things that you can do with the game that would change the applications of the moves if you got counter hits. Now let's say for example we're using Scorpion and I do a spear full screen. This move always behaves this way no matter what. So if I do the regular spear, he gets 30% damage or 30 damage, whatever they call it in this. If I do the EX one, he gets 50. But there's so many things you could add to this just with a counter that would make it more interesting. So say for example Sub-Zero's over on the other side of the screen mashing away, and I see him mashing away. and I throw out a spear. This on counter hit would have a completely different application. So for example, if I threw this out, let's just make something up. Let's use an old move from Scorpion's Spear to really drive the point home. In this game, if someone's mashing across the screen and I do this, nothing changes. I get the get over here if it's successful and that's it. But if you were to add a counter hit property to it, you could do get over here and then have a line of fire go across to Sub-Zero and stun him a bit more. So you know in Mortal Kombat, I think it was Mortal Kombat 10 or it might have even been 11, I'm not entirely sure, but there was a time where Scorpion could amplify his spear and he could shoot fire over to it and it'll sort of stun the character, stun your opponent. In this, that could be applied as a counter hit property and then allow me to follow up, you know, with all sorts of attacks or whatnot. It would just add a layer of depth to the character. Even a move like this, where on hit, you know, it does this, and even if I do the EX one, it's basically for added damage. There's not really much going on there. If I was to do a counter hit, that could change the applications of the move. It could go from being a combo ender to being a combo extender, or a combo starter, for example. So if you throw this move out at the beginning, it just ends like that. There's nothing you can do after, unless you have a cameo. That's pretty much it. That's the end of the move. If somebody was mashing, for example, I did down one into this and they're mashing, and I got a counter hit, maybe it could cause a juggle state. That would give the move added applications. Now, it doesn't have to be a juggle state. I'm just throwing something out there. The point is that counter hits with special moves and normal moves are very, very important. They're very important to fight against because they add a layer of depth, and Mortal Kombat just doesn't have that. Even a move like this is forward 3-2. This move on counter hit, right? So if you do forward 3 now, it just does that. And I guess you can cancel it into certain things, or you can go for the full string, you know, whatever you want to do. But if this had a counter hit property, he could do that, and then Sub-Zero could become stunned because of the counter hit, and then Scorpion could do, I don't know what, yeah, that move. I don't know. They could add something to it. It could add a layer of depth to the moves, so that it makes the moves more threatening as well. There's certain moves in this game where on their own they're very lame and very boring, but with counter hit properties, it changes the applications of the move. For example, in Tekken, if I do a counter hit with certain attacks, let's say for example I do a counter hit with Steve's back one. Steve's back one is notorious for being a counter hit move. It changes the applications of the moves and allows Steve to get a combo extender, and suddenly the back one goes from being a single hit move to a very dangerous launcher or something along them lines. You get what I'm trying to say. The moves change quite dramatically, so you can do that for special moves and for normal moves. So moving away from counter hits, I want to talk a little bit about throws. Throws in this game are very, very bland in my opinion, and I actually don't like the way they work at all. Now in this game, unfortunately, when you go for a throw, there are no visual indicators to show that you're going for a back throw or a forward throw. They use the same hands, and in a 2D fighting game, I'm not really too concerned about visual indicators. What I'm concerned about is that you have to guess in this game even though there's no visual indicators. So if you go for a forward throw, there's no way to tell that I'm going to do a forward throw. There's no way to tell that I'm going to do a back throw. You kind of just have to guess. And in a competitive game, or a game where you're trying to use skill to overcome your opponent, just having random guesses is no good. So one way that they can alleviate this, or actually the only way for a 2D fighter in this instance that I think that they should change this for, is I think they should have one button text. So in Street Fighter, if you see the throw, you press throw as well, it texts the throw. I think that would be basic. I think that's a fair change to add into the game. I don't know why you have to guess which way you're going to get thrown. I mean, imagine being at the end of a tournament and someone goes for a throw, and simply because you guessed wrong, you lose. It removes the skill factor of the game, and it creates a frustrating player experience. And I think it's very important to create a player experience where people feel like they're rewarded for skill and they're rewarded for reading their opponent. Now, there is an element of reading your opponent to the Mortal Kombat throws, because if someone has you in the corner, the likelihood is they're going to go for a forward throw to keep you in the corner. But at the end of the day, it is still a guess, and a smart player will probably go for a back throw just to close out the round. And it does have a layer of mind game, but I actually think the mind game involved in it could have been a lot better if it was a situation where you're not just guessing all the time. That's just my opinion. So I'll change those to 1-button text. I think that would make a more competitive game. I think it'd make it better overall. They also have 1-button text in Injustice, and Injustice is not that different from Mortal Kombat, so I don't know why Mortal Kombat doesn't have them. Moving on, I want to discuss fireballs. So with fireballs in this game, when you launch them, they act as other fireballs will. They travel across the screen, you can EX them, they get added properties. And I do find the Mortal Kombat fireballs quite interesting because they have a lot of quirky fireballs in Mortal Kombat. My problem with fireballs in this game is that if I shoot a fireball and Baraka shoots a fireball, they will pass through each other. So as you can see here, Baraka's shooting a fireball at me. Now in Mortal Kombat 1, fireball wars don't exist. And what I mean by that is this. They just pass through each other. Now in other fighting games, you have situations where this doesn't happen. And you'll shoot a fireball across the screen. And it's not a case of, oh, they're just going to pass through each other and the person with the stronger fireball is going to win. In this instance, Baraka's fireball is stronger than mine. It is about the same speed. So if we keep on going like this, Baraka will end up winning the fireball war. I simply do not have the health as well with Quan Chi. I believe Quan Chi's Scorpion combo grants him 900 health. And basically it makes the fireball war really annoying. The cool thing here is that if I EX it, Quan Chi's fireball eats it up. But this is not something that is consistent across the roster in this game, unfortunately. So I'm not entirely sure why this is the case in Mortal Kombat 1. But for whatever reason, some fireballs will eat up another fireball, but others won't. And it makes no sense to me. So if someone shoots a fireball across the screen from you and someone shoots it back, I think that it should be a situation where fireballs clash. And then obviously if you use an EX one, it can have an added property to it. Some fireballs in this game have that. Some fireballs have the properties of clashing, but it's not consistent across the board. And I'll never understand why Mortal Kombat doesn't apply this, because it ends up losing out on having the ability to have actual fireball wars. If you go and look at Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 5, Street Fighter 6, even in Tekken 7 where you had Akuma and Geese, even in arena fighters like Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, these games have fireballs that clash and it adds a layer of depth to the system.
Feel your back stretching.
اوه اخذ راحته وقام على كيفه. شبوك حاول تكتب ماستر يا سلام صاده بالربوك.
What kind of shit is that?
What are you boys doing in here?
Pudding! That was scary.
It also means that somebody with a slower fireball or somebody that has a fireball that doesn't have as much damage still has more of a chance of getting in and applying their game plan to you, because it comes down to player skill at that point. if I'm really good at shooting fireballs and my fireballs are very consistent and I know how to mix it up, but you have a fireball that is stronger than mine, that is maybe faster than mine, I can apply my skill in that I never really mess up my inputs, because there is a layer of skill to this, even if it's a low level skill, where I can then use my fireballs sparingly and then go in for a jump in and apply my mix-ups or whatever it might be, right? So I think that fireballs in Mortal Kombat need to be reworked. I would like to see them clash across the board. I think that Mortal Kombat has very interesting fireballs, and I think they miss out on the opportunity to really expand on them and basically have loads of different clashes and different properties. They're very bland. They look very cool, but there's a lot of applications that are missing from them. So fireballs is something that I'd like to see changed. Moving on to fatal blows, which are Mortal Kombat super moves. I don't like the way fatal blows work in this, and there's a couple things that I think they should change in them. So, for one, I don't like it when games have super moves that come towards the end of the round. Now, this is no different for Tekken 8. I've been very vocal in the past with Tekken 7 and Tekken 8. I do not like the fact that super moves randomly pop up at the end of the round and then they have hits of armor on them. I don't think that's a fun player experience. I certainly don't like it in Tekken. It's one of Tekken's down points for me personally. And the same is for Mortal Kombat. Now, Mortal Kombat is more egregious in my opinion, because if I use the fatal blow, then 10 seconds later, the fatal blow will come back. And so if Reiko doesn't apply his pressure to me, my fatal blow will return and I can do it again. And fatal blows are already very powerful in this game. Now, there are some that can be stopped with up block and you can go in for a punish, but there are a few in this game where if you do a fatal blow, there's enough pushback on them where the opponent can't really do anything. There's certain situations where it's very risky to go for a punish. I'm not entirely sure why they designed it this way, and I'm not entirely sure why they have it come back. I think if you miss your fatal blow, you should miss it for the round. I don't mind it coming back for the next round if you've missed it. I do like the fact that when you've used it in one round, it's gone. I do think that's a much better feature than having it in every single round. But I still think that in the round that you use it in, I don't think it should come back, because some fatal blows travel very far on the screen. They obviously sometimes eat up hits as well. And so when you've got somebody in the corner, or you've got somebody even mid-screen and they can see your fatal blow, and they successfully block it or they avoid it, it's like, right, I can go in, but I only have 10 seconds to go in, or I'm going to find myself in a situation again where this motherfucker's got a fatal blow and now I've got to deal with this bullshit again. So fatal blows is something that I'd like to see changed. The change, as I said, would be have it so that it's one use in the round, whether you miss it or not. It can come back if you missed it in the previous round, although I would argue that it's probably best to just not have it come back, because then it will put the onus on the player to not recklessly just throw it out constantly. And I also think that having moves come towards the end as a comeback mechanic, I don't think that's very cool. What I would do is I would add a separate bar to where the breaker bar is down there, so that it doesn't eat up special moves, so people still have their fireballs that they can shoot out at EX, and so there's a layer of application there for them. And I would just have it so that normal attacks or certain attacks build up your super bar, and so you get to use it for however, you know, if you build it up twice in the fight, then so be it. But I think it should have a separate meter. I don't like comeback mechanics in general. As I said, this is not just for Mortal Kombat. I don't like it in Tekken at all. So that's something that I would change. Now, one thing that I wanted to discuss about Mortal Kombat 1 that I really don't like is its move list. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. So if you go over to the move list of General Shao and you look at them, it might look like there's a lot of moves here, but there's actually not. It's just the same move extended several times. And so I think that in a game where they use strings, there's a lot of room for growth here. Now, for example, you can do back one, you can do forward one, and you can do standard one. That's all well and good. No problem with that. No problem with that at all. But they could have added things like down forward one. So for example, if you press down one, you get a down one jab. So if you duck and press square, you jab. But if I push forward down, there's nothing that I can really do here. And I think that there's an opportunity there for them to add some extra strings to the move list. I also think that where I've got a move where I can do this, I think that you can also add layers to this as well. So that's pretty much what I can do from there. And it's, you know, it's not a bad move, but I think that there's an opportunity to add more moves here, especially because even though this is on a 2D playing field, Mortal Kombat mirrors Tekken a little bit in terms of strings and in terms of what people can do on the stage, whereas Street Fighter is more like poke heavy, which I think is fine for Street Fighter but not for Mortal Kombat. So I would add moves here. So I can do square triangle, back square triangle. What if you could do back square X, or back square circle, or back square forward triangle, right? You would add layers of depth to the character and extra moves, where I think it's sorely lacking, because if you look at this, there's not that many moves. This is essentially one move, right? It's essentially me going triangle, 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 right? It fluffs the move list, but there's not actually much there. There's room for them to create much more with the character. Now in Shao Kahn's instance, he does get extra moves because he can put his axe down and he can go for things like this that he couldn't otherwise do if he had his axe. So he gets an added moveset. But again, even when you put the axe down, just pressing triangle, triangle, I'm like, okay, I feel like there's more you could do with a character like Shao Kahn. I mean, for one, he has horns on his head, guys. I mean, you basically took the Steppenwolf design, but you didn't really do much with it. I would have an attack where he uses his horns. The character can express himself a little bit more. If you look at something like Dragon Ball Z, for example, Frieza had a tail, and they went to great lengths to show you how dangerous Frieza's tail was. Now, horns is not something that you see on every character in Mortal Kombat, so why would you not utilize it with Shao Kahn? That could be something that he could do. For example, all you can do is down one here. That is all you can do. But what if you could do a string from crouching? So down 1 3, down 1 2. You could use his horns. You can't even use his horns in this down 2. Now I haven't got an issue with his axe being used, although the range on this is shocking now that I think about it. That's pretty bad for. I mean, why? Look. Okay, this makes no sense. Like, why? You're holding an axe, bro. Look how much room there is on your arm. The down 2 should not have that shit arranged. Like, that is pretty bad. But anyway, yeah, so the move lists, I think they're sorely lacking, and that also goes for special moves. Special moves in this game are kind of lackluster. So Dark Energy is a good move, but there's many applications that you could have gone with this. You could have even changed the fireball properties on here if you use Dark Energy. So right now this fireball isn't amazing, but let's say you use Dark Energy and then you do it and it changes the fireball completely. So he gets a completely different fireball. So it gives you more reasons to stand at full screen and do Dark Energy. Even with this, so you do that and then you do the EX one, and this is all well and good, but I think the recovery on it is a bit lame. So what I would do is I would change the recovery options on this one, for example, to add more combo potential to it. Now I know you can definitely combo after it. I just think the combos after are a bit lackluster, but that's just one example. What I'm basically trying to say here is that there's multiple applications to moves that you can apply. So I think Dark Energy could probably do something extra to the fireball. Also, I think that for a game that prides itself on having a lot of supernatural characters, the moves are a bit lackluster in terms of what they can do. So having his iconic knee to axe is all well and good, and even being able to extend it, I believe you can only extend it with VX. It's been a while, guys. Like, this is all well and good, but again, it's a little bit bland for a game that prides itself on having sorcerers and mages and demons and whatever the hell Shao Kahn is supposed to be. I think he's meant to be like Dragon and Shokan or something like that. I'm not too sure, but it feels to me like there is much more room to do something crazy. And what I wanted to explain, I'll illustrate through Scorpion. Now, I was going to do this as a separate section, but we might as well just put it together, both for special moves and for normal moves. So in this game, you have strings like this, or you have strings like this, or you've got strings like that, right? You get the idea. And to me, for a character that prides himself about being all about, you know, fire and hellfire and all that stuff, this is extremely lackluster. The same goes for his special moves. So you've got a special move like this, you've got that, you've got his spear, and you've got hellfire. So you've got hellfire there. and it's a bit lame. I can't lie to you, it's a little bit lame. So if you guys remember, in MKX, Scorpion was a character that would not get off you, and that was expressed perfectly in his moves, in the way he would attack you with his normals and the way that he would attack you with his special attacks. And his special attacks really sort of expressed what kind of a crazy character he was. And if you look at like Hellfire or Inferno or Ninjutsu, all of those move types, they expressed who he was as a character. You knew that Scorpion was a crazy Hellfire ninja and he was going to run up in your face and call me a dog.
Je touche même pas, je vais même pas toucher.
Lucky, mate. But in this game, it's a very slow, take it easy, kind of attack you when I will. Like very unimagined, uninspired pokes. And it's a bit like, is this Mortal Kombat? Like, I mean, what is this? So if you press circle, that's all you get from it. But I think that in a game that again is Mortal Kombat's meant to be a bit crazy. I think that these moves are a little bit lackluster. Like, yeah, it's a good poke. Don't get me wrong, the poke works. It works as a string. It works as you can cancel this, you can catch people. But what I'm trying to explain is that the expression of the character is not there. There's no oomph. You wouldn't know that this is a crazy Hellfire ninja. Now, I know in Mortal Kombat 1, Kuai Lang is now Scorpion, which I still think is a dumb decision. There's no Hanzo in this game. I think Scorpion should have always been Hanzo Hasashi. It just made sense. But even then, in the gameplay, it's very like, I don't know, it's too tame. It's too tame. There's not enough expression in the normal moves or in the special attacks. I'm trying to see Scorpion go ballistic on the screen, summon demons from places like he could in MKX, or set himself on fire, which would cause you to take fire damage. Like, that was a really, really cool design. And I just think that's really lacking in Mortal Kombat 1. It's very, very, for lack of a better word, boring. The design is very boring. Everything seems very lackluster. I mean, yeah, things work. I mean, I think they've proven that Scorpion can work on a competitive front. But that's not really my point here. My point is that he's very boring to sort of watch. It's not the insane inferno that we had in Mortal Kombat 10. Now, not every character in this game is like that, although I wouldn't say anyone really stands out, but Quan Chi and Peacemaker, for example, I think their movesets are pretty interesting and they're kind of fun to watch. I think that the poke nature of Liu Kang kind of works just because he's based off Bruce Lee, and I think that sort of aesthetic works for the character. But I don't think it works for everyone, and I think across the board in this game it's very, very lacking. There's other characters like Reiko, for example, where his moveset really doesn't make any sense to me. For a war general who seems a little bit unhinged as well, it's a very tame, boring moveset. I mean, most of the time with Reiko, what you see is he's standing across the screen just throwing ninja stars at you. And then every now and then he might slide in and punch you in the face. And I'm like, it doesn't fit the character. It doesn't really make any sense. So I would change the movesets and how they look on the game, because they don't express the character's personalities very well. When you go and play Tekken and you play a certain character, you instantly get an idea for what kind of character they are and what they're going for. Even in Street Fighter, you get an instant idea of what they're going for, but you don't really get that in Mortal Kombat 1, and I think it is sorely lacking. I quickly just want to talk about chip damage in this game. Chip damage has been something that I've hated in Mortal Kombat for a very, very long time. You all know how it works. If someone throws a move out on you and you're blocking it, it takes chip damage. Now, I don't mind if they want to keep the chip damage element in the game. My problem is when you get to the end of the round, and there's some situations where you cannot do anything, and I don't think it's good when you've got a competitive fighting game and you literally have zero options. This is an issue that I've seen Street Fighter address as well, that you have to use certain moves if you want to chip your opponent. In Mortal Kombat, that's not the case. I can chip you with anything basically if you've got no health. They did add Last Breath to the game, and some things that would alleviate a instant chip kill, but I don't think it's good enough, especially when you can get people in situations like this and then just call your cameo and start the situation all over again, and the chip damage is actually quite rife on it. Flawless block is an option, but I don't think it's a consistent option. I don't think it works as consistently as they might have thought it would. I don't think it alleviates the issue of being chipped out constantly, so I think end of round chip needs a complete overhaul. And I would go as far as to say that I think chip damage in this game in general with normal moves is kind of lame. I'm not really a big fan of it. I don't mind special moves doing chip damage, that makes sense to me, but I think there should be certain moves that do chip damage if they're going to be normal attacks, and I don't mind special moves doing it. But across the board, I'm not really a big fan of it. I think that it should be reserved for certain things, and I don't think chip kills should be the thing that should be a thing that exists in this game. And then if we quickly talk about strings, I hate the way strings work in Mortal Kombat 1, and I've hated the way they've worked since MK11 actually. It might have even been some MKX strings as well. Actually, it might have been MK9. I think NRS does a really poor job of implementing strings. So you'll get a string like you know, this for example. I'm just using this one for example, but you'll find yourself blocking strings in situations that you shouldn't really need to. So I found in Mortal Kombat 1 where they have strings that look sort of similar to Tekken 8 and Tekken 7 or Tekken in general, but they don't operate in a similar fashion, and this is actually something that I would like them to copy Tekken for. So Tekken has strings much like Mortal Kombat, but if you complete a string in Tekken, more often than not, you're unsafe, you're going to be launched, or you're going to be like heavily punished for it. But in Mortal Kombat, for whatever reason, there's a lot of strings in this game where you can just complete them. You can't flawless block some of them, you can't up block some of them, you kind of just have to hold it. And then that makes the chip damage situation worse, and it creates a more frustrating player experience. So I think, to make this part a little bit short, is I think strings need to be reworked in this game. I think if you go for the first hit, generally it's like, okay, it's probably going to be like -1 on block or something. It's going to be relatively safe. If you go for the second hit, then you kind of lost your turn if they've blocked it. And if you go for the third hit, the trade-off is you get more damage if you complete it and you hit it. But if you don't, and they block it, then they should be able to go on the attack. But unfortunately in this game, there's quite a lot of moves and quite a lot of characters where that's just not the case, and they're able to continue their pressure or maybe interrupt you with a down one, and it's quite annoying if I'm being completely honest. I don't know why they do it. It makes no sense to me, and it's something that I'd like to see them rework, just so it makes, again, a more fun player experience, and it makes more sense. You know, if you do the first hit, you're still at advantage, you can poke them again. If you do the second hit, then, you know, maybe you're at neutral and it becomes more of a guessing game, and the third hit is now their turn because they've blocked it. And the trade-off is, if you hit the third hit, you get more damage. Risk and reward factor in Mortal Kombat is all over the place, and again, I think that comes down to they don't understand how to balance games properly. Then I just want to talk about low pokes in Mortal Kombat games. They've always had the most goofy animations and basically the least applications of all games that I've seen. These they cancel, but they don't combo into anything, and I think this is where counter hits would have been really good. So if you don't want to change how lows work, even though I think this is really weird, it almost feels like I'm being sucked into his knee when I do it, then fine. But if somebody's mashing, you could add counter hits to lows, give them an added application, so that if someone does this, because I can cancel it into that special move, it becomes an actual combo. If you look here, right, that's 6 hits, but if I do this, it's still 6 hits. You can't combo into it. The same goes for a down one, and so it leaves a little bit to be desired. And counter hits would basically bring in an added element to the game, where if people are mashing, the down one have more application, because we're like, right, you were mashing, that's why this is doing a full combo, that's why I'm getting extra damage. But they kind of have minimal applications in this game, and again, that goes back to Mortal Kombat 1 being very simplistic and devoid of any real nuance. So I would add that to it. Also, there's not much you can really do with lows outside of like their single hits. So in a game that mirrors Tekken, where you have strings, where unlike Street Fighter, where it's just pokes a lot of the time, you can do things like this, where it's a string. I would have it so that you can do the same with lows. I mean, why not? Why can't you do X and then circle, or X and then stand into an attack or something? Like, have a string where I can sort of like, I can do more moves with my character. There's more options. This is very boring. It doesn't even have a counter application, so that's literally all it is. And it's also a very annoying attack. It's very bland. Why can't you do down 1, 2, right? Add something extra into there, or down 1, forward to cancel out of it. I mean, you know, something. It's been like this for a long time, and it feels very lazy. Like they just sort of glaze over this. You got like, I mean, what is this? It's just very boring. There's a lot of things that you can do with this. I don't mind the back 3s or the back 4, sorry, the sweeps. They're like a Mortal Kombat staple, just like I don't mind the uppercuts. But with the down 1s and the down 3s and the down 4s, there's a lot of room there, both to add counter hits, to add extra strings to it, and it would add a level of depth to it, in my opinion, that it's just lacking right now. There's not really much going on here. And then 2 things that I want to touch on quickly before we start to like round off the video, but there are a few more things I'm going to rattle off on about, probably another couple of minutes. Stage interactions are gone from Mortal Kombat, and I actually think that's a big L. I think the Mortal Kombat 10 stage interactions were pretty awesome. I thought they were decent in Mortal Kombat 11, but they weren't great. But if you guys remember, on the snow stage, you could grab this piece of wood and like smack someone around the face, and I thought that was pretty good. Also, because you could block it as well. In Injustice 2, you could block them as well. I think stage interactions are pretty cool, apparently, especially for a game that is trying to be very cinematic in nature. I think knocking people through walls and picking up objects on the stage for a one-time use that don't do a lot of damage, but maybe have different applications. So say, for example, I get you over here because there's a hammer in the background. And normally Scorpion would go for a double low. Let's say a double low, for example, here, but there's a hammer there, and I go for this, and then I cancel into stage interaction and hit you over the head of the hammer. It could give them added applications. Now, they don't need to do overwhelming amounts of damage to annoy people, but it's just something extra you could go for, and it adds another element to the game. So I think stage interactions is something that should come back. Just don't make the damage overwhelming on them. Don't make the interactions between going between one stage to another too long, because then it will get annoying. And, you know, make it so that there's multiple ways to go about it. So that's something that I think is lacking. I don't know why they took it out. One of the last things I want to talk about is this. What the hell is this? Why is this in the game? First of all, it looks goofy. It is a complete waste of a slot. There are abundance of things that you could add to this to make it more interesting. Flip stance is nonsense, and this is NRS being lazy. There's no reason why this is in the game. Nobody cares that Scorpion's got his back to you here. Like, literally no one cares. It changes nothing. Flip stance is actually a waste of time. And NRS, if you ever watch this video, I want you to know that I know that this is you copying out and doing some extra coding and adding something to the game. There's no reason why flip stance should be there. None whatsoever. So get out of the game. It's nonsense. If you have to rework the super moves so that it's not blocking flip stance, then rework it. You can't tell me that you can't use your brains to do that. Get this out of the game. I don't really need to go over it too much. It's just nonsense. Why is it there? In a fighting game in 2024, this would have been acceptable in 1998. It's 2024, guys. You've had this in your game for God knows how long. It looks stupid to begin with. It doesn't need to be there. What I wanted to talk about very briefly was the cameos. The cameo system in this game I think is a little bit shit. I think the idea of having a partner that you can tag in is good, but I think the applications and way they're added in is pretty lame. So what I would do, one of the first changes I would make, is that I would completely differentiate all of the cameos. One thing you'll notice in this game is that when people nerfed Cyrax, or when NRS nerfed Cyrax, what did people do? They just went over to Striker. He essentially does what Cyrax did to a lesser extent, right? He covers you after you've done something. So if I do something that, you know, might be unsafe, or my turn might be ending, I'll just throw the grenades out, it's my turn again. And it's just that bit like, well, this is lame. And then also, because that is so overwhelmingly good, there's no reason for people to come in and use Striker's other applications like that, because first of all, it doesn't really add much to the game, and two, I can just do this. That adds so much more to my game. So you need to balance out the cameos in terms of the applications, and you also need to differentiate them. There's a lot of cameos that just do things in this game that other cameos can do, but to a lesser extent, and I think that's a little bit of an L. I do acknowledge that like characters like Chameleon, and I guess when Janet Cage comes out, they're going to add more to the game. I know Tremor adds more to this game as well, so it looks like they're actually making better cameos as time goes on, but the base cameos are a little bit lame. Also, one thing I would have done that they've missed the mark on completely here is I wouldn't have any crossover between the cameos and the characters. I would have had them completely separate. So no 2 Scorpions, no 2 Sub-Zeros. Now I know not everyone will like that, but for me it gives the developers more of an opportunity to pick characters that we'll never see come back again and add them into the roster. I mean, Scorpion is already a playable character in this game. It would have been cool to see another character in his place in cameos. That's just my opinion. I know not everybody will agree with that. I would like to see more characters from the 3D era, or even from the 2D era that we don't see anymore, in the cameo section, because we know characters like Darius, for example, nobody's going to buy Darius, so putting him as a cameo and giving him quirky applications was actually a good thing. I commend them for what they did with Darius. Even Motaro, nobody's going to play Motaro in an actual competitive one-on-one game because he's too hard to design, so putting him as a cameo is a good move. There should be more things like that. I don't think they should waste slots on characters that already exist. Janet Cage would have been fine if the character didn't look like an absolute imbecile, but they decided to go down a design route that I don't think anybody really likes, and I think they falsely advertised Johnny Cage as well, so that's just bad business practices in my opinion. But I think that they need to offer more player freedom through the cameos by differentiating them. Now, one thing I do want to touch on before we end on this video is there's not much more that I really want to show here, but there's more that I just want to talk about the general aesthetic of the game. So there's a couple things that I would like to change about Mortal Kombat 1. I don't know if this is something they can actually implement into the game, or maybe it's something they can do for the second game, but the impact on moves is just terrible in this game. This is meant to be the most violent and the most bloody of all of the fighting games that have ever existed, and so the impact of the moves should be way more devastating than what they are. Like, it's just ridiculous. Like, it's so lazy. In Tekken 8, it sounds like a gun is going off when you're getting punched, and then with the added advent of counter hits, it sounds like a shotgun is going off. In this game, it doesn't have counter hits, and what I said earlier was it would be really nice if that's something they could add, because it could give the moves some added application, and it could make it so that they even have different hit sparks and different sound effects, but they don't have that in this game. Even something like that, the hit impact in this game is sorely lacking. I think that they need to increase the level of violence in this game. I know that might sound silly to say, but what the hell? Is that just about missing or whiffing? Anyway, yeah, I think the impact in Mortal Kombat games is pretty bad. Also, one thing I would change, this might be a weird change for some people, I would make the character models a little bit bigger, so that they're not as big as I'd like them to be. And I think this is a hard point for me to really explain, but Mortal Kombat 10 kind of nailed the aesthetic of the character models to me much more than what we got in 11 and what we have in this. They seem a bit more smaller and nimble in this. In Mortal Kombat 10, they seemed a bit bigger and more in your face, and I think that would help with the level of violence and impact on the moves, because again, yeah, there's blood, but it's just a bit lackluster. I don't know, it's a bit lame, it's a bit slow. There's not that much oomph to it, you know? It's just they could have done more in terms of like the general sound design and how moves interact with each other. I also think that the tone of this game is too bright, if that makes sense, and the stages are a bit devoid of life. So graphics wise, this does look really nice, don't get me wrong, but it's not as it doesn't feel like Mortal Kombat to me. I'm looking for thunderstorms and lightning and tornadoes and death and destruction in the background, and that really like metal look. And whilst this looks pretty, I don't know if that really fits Mortal Kombat. Now, I know the story is meant to be a retelling of Mortal Kombat 1, and so war has not really broken out yet, but again, that's something they could have addressed in the story mode, and the stages could have reflected that. You could even have a night and day version of this, where in the day it's very peaceful and very calm, and you flip it to night and there's like destruction everywhere. There's fire on the buildings, there's those two people in the background no longer monks, there's like two demons fighting at the back there, there's dead bodies everywhere. Just something that fits Mortal Kombat more. So what I'm trying to express is that the tone in the combat and the tone in the stages is a little bit too lacking, and it's just not, it's not impactful, and it's not dark enough for me. So I would darken the mood in Mortal Kombat heavily. Like, if they're going to do DLC stages and sort of make things up, just add in the most insane stages where there's just death and destruction everywhere. And for God's sakes, fix the music, man. The music in this game sucks. It does not fit Mortal Kombat at all. One other little thing I would do is I would speed up the game a little bit. Normals are a little bit slow. Just general animations are a little bit slow, a little bit lackluster. I think that they could speed them up quite a bit, and it would generally just help the game for me. I don't know if that's really making sense, but it just feels very slow at times. Like it doesn't have that MKX or MK9 feel to it. It's a little bit too slow. Those are really the main things that I really wanted to discuss in terms of gameplay. I don't think I missed anything out. I spoke about the lows, I spoke about the general normals, the special attacks, the throws, the fireballs, the fatal blows, the way characters look and the way they are lacking in expression. But if there's anything that you think I missed, then let me know in the comment section below. Obviously, there are an abundance of changes that need to happen to Mortal Kombat across the board. And one thing I'll address in this video, instead of making a separate video about it if you've made it to the end, is some people will say to me, Mike, why are you talking about Mortal Kombat if you don't like it? And to those people, I'm going to answer this question in video format because it's one that I get every now and then, and I always find it a little bit weird that people ask. I don't like the fact that Mortal Kombat 11 and Mortal Kombat 1 have gone down the route that they have. But I'm clearly a Mortal Kombat fan. If you guys have seen me on live stream, you've seen my room, or if you've even been through my older YouTube videos and seen what my tournament history is like, it's always been heavily geared towards Mortal Kombat. Now, unfortunately, the last two games really rubbed me the wrong way, but that doesn't mean that I don't want the franchise to improve. And so the point of my videos is to point things out to people in hopes that the message will get out there to larger content creators, or even NRS might see it and they might steal ideas from me. Who knows? I mean, it's not to say that I am the savior of Mortal Kombat or anything like that. It's just ideas that I have for the game. I also don't understand it when people say, I don't like the game, so you shouldn't talk about it. I don't talk about it, so why are you talking about it? Well, if you don't like the game and you don't want to talk about it, then don't. I don't like the game, but I want to talk about it. I like sitting here and discussing things that I'd like to see change. I'd like sitting there talking to Tom Brady or even talking to people that I disagree with about things that could change in Mortal Kombat. That's something that I like doing. If you don't like the game and you don't like seeing it, then what are you doing here? I would say spend your time more wisely. This is something that I enjoy doing. It's not for clicks or for chasing bait or something like that. I mean, obviously every single YouTube video you create is so people can click on it, but you generally create them because you want to. If I was looking to garner a lot of people coming to my channel, I wouldn't be choosing fighting games to do it. They're the most niche of every genre, and we know that. Although they're growing in popularity, if I was really looking to do that, I'd go talk about Final Fantasy, or I'd go talk about changes in World of Warcraft, or FIFA, or Call of Duty, or games that have millions more players, active players on them. Fighting games are not going to make you rich. It's for the most part anyway. Some people are very successful with them, like Maximilian Dude, for example, but I'm talking about this because I want to. So if you're confused at the point of my Mortal Kombat videos, yes, I don't like the direction that Mortal Kombat 1 has gone in, but Mortal Kombat as a whole is one of my favorite franchises, and I'd like to see it do better. And so I like discussing it. I genuinely like talking about it and talking about things that we can see change, and then, you know, poking fun at it, because I also like making light jabs at things. I like to be critical of things. This whole page is about me being critical about certain things, and it's not to say I know everything. Even in this video, there might be comments that people make where they're like, Mike, I don't agree with this change and this is why. And we can have a discussion in the comment section below. But if it's not something that you like doing and you don't like wasting your time, then don't waste it. There's no reason for you to be here. There's no reason for you to be in the comment section. Whilst I appreciate the interaction and I appreciate the conversations we've had, if you don't like something, then don't do it. I like talking about these things. I like talking about, for example, the activists that are trying to self-insert into games and bring in their own ideologies and agendas. That doesn't mean I like the activists. I just think it's important to talk about these things, because the more you talk about these things, the more you raise awareness to them, and hopefully more people will catch on. I don't agree with the notion that if you don't like something, don't talk about it. That's not how you bring about change. If you leave something unchecked and you think it's a problem, it's not going to go away. For all the people that are like, don't discuss this because these people don't deserve the attention, just ignore them, they'll go away. That's not how life works, ladies and gentlemen. That is not how life has ever worked. If you don't check people on their bullshit, and if you don't bring things up and bring awareness to them, they fester. And before you know it, you've got a situation where you can no longer stop what it was that you were saying to ignore, and it's in your face, and it's in your schools or your environments or your games or whatever it might be, and there's nothing you can do about it. What you do is you stand up, you talk about it. And it's not like I'm fighting a war here, I'm talking about a game, but in general, if there's things you don't like, you speak about them and you bring awareness to them. Yeah, you might be giving that particular person their 15 minutes of fame, but so what? If you have something you want to say, you don't turn a blind eye to it, you speak about it. At least that's my notion. If that's not your notion, then by all means stay silent, but that's what we do over here. We see something we don't like, whether it's about people in the real world or things in game, and we talk about them. So I was going to make a separate video addressing those, but might as well just tell you guys here. That is the point of the channel here. So I don't agree with that notion. I don't know if it was Morgan Freeman or someone that said, oh, the best way to combat racism is just not talk about it, which I couldn't agree with any less. Like, okay, if you don't talk about it, racists still exist. Like, if you let people fester in their dark corners of the internet saying whatever they want and you don't bring attention to it, then eventually the movement will grow so big and you're like, hold on a minute, why are these people storming my community? If you have ideologies that you don't like and you ignore them, they might fester and they might grow. And that is the same for games. If you just ignore things, then nothing changes. For example, I'll give you a real quick example before we close off the video. Do you guys remember the Sonic film? Where everybody was really mad at how cracked out Sonic looked? The first rendition of Sonic in that trailer, he looked like a meth addict. And what did people do? They spoke up. And the developers listened, the people that are creating the movie listened, and they redesigned Sonic, and the Sonic films actually turned out to be a lot of fun, and now they're spawning TV shows, and you know what, I don't mind, because they listened and the films were actually pretty good. If I followed the mentality, or people follow the mentality of, well, if you don't like it, don't go and watch it, why are you commenting? We wouldn't have never have gotten a better Sonic. That mentality don't work, people. I was literally having a conversation with somebody in my comment section today saying, well, we shouldn't give these people attention, but I guess YouTubers have to farm. You ignore an infection on your wrist, you ignore a home intruder, you ignore people coming into your community changing things that you don't like, you ignore anything and see how that works out for you. See how it goes. If you look through history, men that ignore things are the ones to blame. Men that stand up and change things and do things for their community are considered heroes, basically. And not to exclude women, I mean, the same goes for them, but for argument's sake, you know how the saying goes. Strong men create good times create weak men create bad times, and so forth and so forth. The cycle keeps going. You have to speak up on things that you don't like. Anyway, this video has gone off into a completely different subject, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. These were a couple of changes to Mortal Kombat 1 that I'd like to see, and let me know if there's any changes in the comment sections that you guys would like to see. Take care, have a good day, and peace.